did you learn about medicine? It's very broad knowledge, but not specifically in your area of expertise, because you learned it the hard way. You're IT specialist, not really medical specialist. How would you approach, as somebody who's never done a medical startup, how would you advise them to approach this topic?
So I can certainly speak about my experience here because, as you mentioned, but I'm definitely a technology person and I never had anything to do with startup except being a contractor. So what I did in that case when I decided to set up Hashiona, I had this vision. I knew what the patient needs are. So I was really looking at the product from patient-centric approach. That was my first thing because that was the only thing I understood. I didn't know anything about regulation on this market. I didn't know anything about fundraising on health tech startups. I didn't know anything like what are the kind of challenges in regulation on different kind of markets that Hashiona is operating even right now. So what I did basically, it may seem very funny for some of you, but I basically spent a lot of time talking to other people. The people that I knew that have experience, but also I was cold calling people from the industry without any closer connection. I found those people on the link, I looked what they're doing, and I basically was sending them the message saying, hey, I'm the founder of Hashiona, we're helping the Hashimoto patients. Could you spend 30 minutes with me to give me some of the insight on the industry, to help me with some specific problem? And knowing being in this industry for so many years, I knew people are very eager to share their experience with the first-time entrepreneur or people who are just getting specific industry. And in that case, it basically was also the time when pandemic started. So just to give you a bit of view, we set up Hashiona literally 2 or 3 weeks before pandemic started. Obviously, as everyone, I a little bit panicked on the very beginning because the only way I knew to meet people was through going to events, conference, and so on. When the pandemic started and we all get locked up, my first concern was like, okay, how I'm going to meet people, how I'm going to see the industry, how I'm going to talk to my users. And yeah, that was the point. I just used basically LinkedIn and I talk as many as possible. I literally sometimes have even like 15 calls per day.
We are talking about the focus of our discussion today is about finding how to raise money and empower your audience in a medical startup. And here is a very useful advice or how to narrow down what kind of medical startup you have. So the healthcare startup worth 4.5 billion in venture funding in 2015. I think it's raising double that money because of pandemic. All people suddenly realized this is something that we need to focus and we need to shift. I'm just making up some numbers, but definitely there is one very interesting facet showcased here by Kelvin Chan, who's a healthcare professional working on how data can help solve many of today's current health problems. So he narrowed it down into healthcare coordination startup, payment reform, personalized medicine, or patient empowerment. And we discussed with you, Eva, that your startup is a funky startup because it fluctuates between the 3 of them. Maybe you could narrow it down to patient empowerment and you could tell us how is your startup empowering your patient?
Sure. So definitely there's 3 things on this graph that Hashiona is combining into, and that's patient empowerment, that's the personalized medicine, and that's a companion diagnostic or aftercare diagnostic. In terms of Hashiona, we are right now positioning ourselves as a wellness and lifestyle app. But we're aiming and we work hard to get into a digital therapeutics solution fully. To do it, you have to have 2 things, which are the patient trials and result and the full certification. Depends on the markets, obviously, either CE mark in Europe or FDA certification in the US. For Hashiona right now, we are performing with some preclinical patient studies, and hopefully shortly we will be aiming to do a full patient trials. And then after that, going through the full certification process.